Are you fascinated by food photography? What tools and techniques can you use for food styling? This is exactly what we're going to answer in this episode of the Zista Podcast. Welcome to the Zista Podcast, where we invite industry professionals and academicians to answer questions that students have within a specific subject area. And today, we're going to be going deeper into the art and science of food styling and food photography. Joining us today is Michael Swamy, a professional food stylist who has worked on some really amazing projects and publications. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael. He's a chef, food stylist, writer, travel photographer. He's based in Mumbai, and he's actually graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, London. So he's been a chef consultant with Indian wildlife resorts. He's conducted food styling and food photography workshops in India and abroad. He's curated food festivals, authored books like The Diabetic Cookbooks, Masala Dabba, The Easy Guide to Pairing Indian food with wine. And he's also the founder at CottageChef and Backpack Chef. So welcome to the show, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Amit, and it's such a pleasure to be here and to be talking about one of my favorite subjects.
Yes, in fact, I was going through your profile and I realized that this is someone who's really deeply passionate about food styling and photography. And, when we were looking for a guest to invite to cover this particular subject, I must say I was absolutely delighted that our paths crossed and that you could make time for this episode.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Right. So, Michael, let me ask you this. What attracted you to build a career in food styling and photography?
So I think I was given a camera at the eighth grade, my very first camera. And it was, one of these very small hotshot type cameras, which used to get in the old days. And it gradually evolved into a DSLR, I think by the 12th grade. And in those days, you had film rolls. You didn't have all this digital stuff. So you were very careful about how many images you clicked and making sure it was in focus and all before you even clicked an image. Today's day and age, you just keep on clicking. But that attracted me to photography. We used to also get the National Geographic at home. And it was all about travel and wildlife and, the magic of National Geographic, we all know, with David Attenborough and all.
Absolutely.
All of that. And that got me intrigued with documenting food. And it was then that my mother said, you go and become a chef first. If you want to shoot, know your subject first. And I think that was a very important lesson that I learned right in the beginning was first know your subject before you can even get involved with it.
Right. I think what you said, I like one thing when you said that you need to kind of make sure you have the correct shot, the right frame. And I think a great photograph is a combination of different elements, right? It's also about the balance, the lighting, the background, the foreground, the main subject that you're focusing on, so many different elements to focus on. And I think this is an art that you have perfected as you've come along, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. The next question I wanted to ask you, was the one relating to tools and techniques. So for food styling and photography, what are some of the most important tools and techniques that students can use?
One is having a great camera.
Right.
And then mastering the camera. So you have to read the manuals. You have to actually know your camera. It's where you are in control of the camera. You come to a point where you are in control of the camera is not in control of you. And so I think that's the basic tool that you need for food photography. The second thing is learning lighting. And lighting is something we see from the minute we wake up to the time we go to sleep. And most people don't even realize what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis, or even imbibing how the light changes from room to room, from the angles of the sun. And I think that's the best learning tool is from nature itself. How the sun teaches you the play of light and shadow, rather than just learning it from strobe lights. The morning light is the best when you wake up in the morning, that soft light. And these are things that you then start putting into photographing people or food, or replicating it with a strobe light.
Okay. That is interesting that you would replicate something you see in nature, because nature is the biggest teacher, right? So many scientific inventions have come about when scientists have observed something in nature, thought about why, what, how, gone a little deeper, and then found something. And from a photographer's perspective, learning that natural, looking at the natural play of light that we see in nature, I think is so important. That's a very, very valuable lesson that you've just shared. So when it comes to inspiration, where do you seek inspiration, and how do you keep up with the latest trends in food
Uh,
styling?
so I think in the 1990s, it was books and magazines. There was no such thing as internet in those days. So it was just getting cookery books, some of the latest cookbooks uh, to learn it, because food photography was at a very nascent stage in those days. And it was when I went to the Cordon Bleu in London that I started working with a few food photographers and food stylists and seeing how they approached food. And then I brought all that learning back home and then
Right.
yeah, so that's when I started applying it to my work, to when I was teaching students at the catering college about plating, how to plate a food, how to look at food on from a visual aspect. Yeah. So yeah,
It's so important, I mean, food has to be visually appealing, and today we live in the world where everything is Instagrammable.
yes,
So restaurants are also thinking about not just about the food, but thinking that, okay, we need to make sure that our patrons come, click pictures, post it on Instagram, and that's going to drive more people back to our establishment. That's such an
absolutely.
important element. Absolutely. So let's say you have a food photography shoot coming up. How do you plan? How do you prepare for it?
Uh, Actually, the planning goes almost 2 or 3 days in advance. You sit with the client, you discuss, and you actually sketch out on a piece of paper uh, what the client wants before you even get onto the day of the shoot. So you actually draw rough sketches of the kind of crockery you're going to need, how the food is going to be plated. Today's day and age, you pull off images from the internet to show a client, so that well, a lot of the time, clients also themselves don't know what they want.
Right.
So you have to guide them at times. Yeah. And it's fun. That whole process is fun of guiding them to show them how their food can look better. Uh, a lot of so-called art directors these days are just cut, copy, paste. And I'm like,
Okay.
no, give the give the photographer his due that he's learned something and let him showcase his talent to you rather
Right.
than copy paste something. You know what I mean? And so even when I'm working with photographers, I say first, you shoot and then you shoot my way. You know?
Okay. Okay.
So then we have two different things to show to
Takes.
the client. Yeah, you have two different takes. I think it
Right.
works. You know, rather than my saying, I want this copied. You know, I said, why don't you shoot something? And this is what I would like to shoot. Well, this is what the client has asked for. And then let's see how it goes. Then they feel
Absolutely.
happy. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you have a client has their own expectation, they're conscious of how they're portraying their brand. And
Yes.
on one hand, you may have your own creative thought process. So how do you balance the two, your creative vision versus what a client is expecting?
So first shoot what the client wants,
Okay.
and then shoot what you want.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, because sometimes the client is quite happy to have both the shots also, and he's getting it for the same price. So you're not going to be charging him double or something. Okay. So
Right.
yeah, a lot of the time they sometimes go with the other shot even. Yeah, as long as it fits within their expectations.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But delivering to the brief and working with the brief
Yes.
is super important. I
Very
would
important.
imagine.
Very important.
So in the course of your career and the work that you've done, you must have worked on a lot of fun projects. Is there
Yes.
anything that stands out, for you? Anything which is really memorable or something that was a lot of fun working on?
Yeah, when we were working on a Kellogg shoot, we were working with a
Okay.
lot of kids, and because it was cornflakes and kids, and the photographer's son was the model,
Okay.
and and after a little while, he was like, what is going on? Yeah, and we were like trying to get him to sit in one place. But I think that's what makes it memorable when you're dealing with people and food in the same shot. Uh, their mood swings, the food is playing up with the food has to be shot within a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
All this, so you're dealing with a lot of uh, external problems rather than just shooting the food.
So
So
it's
that
a
makes it
situation of
memorable.
managed chaos.
Yes, manage the chaos. Yeah,
I can imagine. I can imagine. Whenever you have, children in the mix, things can take an unexpected
yeah,
turn.
true.
Right. Okay. Super. All right. That brings me to the last question I'd like to ask you. There could be students who want to pursue food styling or food photography as a professional career. What would you tell them in terms of what are the skills they need or the traits that they need to succeed? And should they have a background or a training in a specific subject area to succeed?
It's very important to study to be a chef first because
Okay.
you need to know how food will react with the elements, how it will react with the elements. I mean by harsh lighting,
Mm-hmm.
sunlight, or winter time. Uh, you do need to gain a sense of art, um, knowledge of art. Uh, because a lot of us, I think we kill art in school by the eighth grade, you know,
Mm.
and by the eighth grade, your art is out as a subject is out of the window. And but I think you really need to imbibe art as a emotion. Because after all, it's an emotion that you're going to be conveying to a viewer. The food, the everything is an emotion. And how does the photographer capture the emotion? As a chef, how do you put that emotion on a plate? And then using his lighting to create that emotion to somebody who's, say, 5,000 miles away.
Right.
Yeah. So the viewer then has no connect with either you as a stylist or a photographer. He's going to see the photograph. So how does he emote to that photograph? How do you evoke a feeling out of him? And that's very important for a student to start learning right at the beginning.
I think all good points, having a sound base in the culinary domain, having a sense
Absolutely.
of art, and that point you made about art, imbibing art as an emotion. I think I really connected with that. It's something I'm going to keep with me because at the end of the day, it's all about dealing with people. You're working with people, you're working with emotions. So if you can capture that and portray it, it's amazing in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like that. I like that. And on a funny note, I just like to say, so many times you go to say, let's say maybe the smaller establishments, right? Like the Udupi kind of restaurants, where they have this entire a row of pictures, of the different food items. And sometimes it's a case where what you see on the picture is nothing like what you actually get.
Yeah, it's you don't, because sometimes just setting up a plate can take you over an hour. Just
Right,
setting up one plate, the photographer doesn't like it, the client doesn't like it, getting
right.
the sauce to fall right. And a lot of times we have a dummy plate. So
Okay.
everything is put down on the table, a dummy
Hmm.
plate. Cameraman gets we get the lighting ready, everything ready, and then the actual plate is put in front of it.
Got it.
Yeah. So as a food stylist and photographer, your day actually starts early in the morning, going to the market. Then you come to the studio, and then you're shooting those long hours to just get one photograph sometimes. And yeah, so there's a lot of people involved with it, like we said earlier. There's an art director, food stylist, there's the guy who gets the props, there are guys handling the lights. So there's a whole chaos situation in the studio, organized chaos. Yeah.
I like the way you very rightfully brought out the different roles and the different collaborators that work with you to make that project a success. So
Yeah.
like in many other fields, what we see is sometimes the creative output is the result of different people working together and collaborating, and that's amazing. So thank you for highlighting that, and also opening my eyes at least to one fact that you may see one photograph, but there's a lot that's gone into it. There's a
Yes.
story behind that
There-
that picture itself.
that's why I tell people always there's a story. The emotion is the story. There's a history behind the story, the dish, all of that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. I really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you so much once again for making time for the podcast. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more content like this. And if you prefer tuning into audio, you can catch us on Google, Apple, or Spotify. Our handle is the Zista Podcast. Till we meet again, I'd say stay curious.